The Hokage versus the Uchiha is usually a topic that will come around over and over and over again. It cycles through the internet every couple years, at least in the Naruto fanbase. It's sort of like in the same category as an Akatsuki scaling video or something of the like. But in this case, I wanted to do something a little bit more specific. So usually when you see this question, Hokage versus Uchiha, who would win? Most people would, say like, oh, Six Paths Naruto and Sasuke, Hokage Kakashi. These characters are a little bit too powerful for the Uchiha team. For instance, Naruto and Sasuke stalemate each other, and then Kakashi, realistically, he might just clear through all of the Uchiha. Him and Hashirama is tagging up, especially with some teleportation against the likes of Madara, even a Six Paths of Madara or Obito. It might not actually matter too much. Kakashi, realistically, he's a character who is fending off Kashin Koji, and Kashin Koji thought that it was more favorable to escape and just TP out of there rather than just one-shot Kakashi. And this guy would go on to fight Jigen later and thought he could deal with Delta, who was fighting full-power Naruto in Taijutsu. And this Naruto, as we've gone over many, many times, I think it's gone pretty concrete over the years, would annihilate the Uchiha, especially the likes of Ten Tails Obito and even Ten Tails Madara. I went over this in my adult Sasuke versus Madara video. I went over this in my could Sasuke take down all of the Hokage. In my new Boruto video, I went over more of these details. I went over this in my Baryon mode video. Realistically, everyone kind of gets the idea. Kakashi actually is a pretty heavy hitter. And Kishimoto actually implies that he has a strong relevance in the plot right now, but we just haven't seen him yet. Some people think this might be retcon, but the fact that he could be relevant in a plot that has characters far surpassing characters that are supermaning Six Paths Naruto and Sasuke like they are random background characters that don't matter, it should tell you that more than likely most of the Uchiha are getting folded, especially Kakashi and Naruto together tagging up. Sasuke just can't carry all of that. That being said, though, you could include Sarada in the mix, and you could have Sarada instead of, say, Fugaku or Izuna, and she would probably turn the favor in the Uchiha side. Sasuke and Sarada together probably would annihilate Naruto and Kakashi, just being realistic. Sarada is capable of dodging basically the Divine Ten Tails or Divine Tree version of Sasuke in the Boruto manga, and she is just in base Sharingan. She's able to help take him out, and then when she gets her MS, she is capable of dominating and no-diffing these Divine Tree characters, at least one of them, and these characters are able to pressing base Boruto, and base Boruto is far above Jigen, so that should really just show you Sarada more than likely turns the favor for the Uchiha. Of course, we don't know exactly how strong Kakashi is, but based on just empirical data, Sarada is above him by quite a bit. Just sending Kashin Koji away, saying it's better just to go away than to take my time dealing with you, doesn't mean that you're stronger than Sarada at this moment. But, as a cute little detail, she may actually one day become the only character who would be on both teams. So that might be something to go over. Now, this also leads into Six Paths scaling versus non-Six Paths characters. So it's sort of day and night power levels. As an example, let's say you have Renegon Sasuke here versus all of the Hokage, or, even if you just have the main four Uchiha versus the main four Hokage, you have Ten Tails Madara, Ten Tails Obito, Renegon Sasuke, and then Itachi versus Hashirama, Tobirama, Hiruzen, and Minato, KCM2 Minato even. Well, Sasuke can slash through all of them. I mean, Nine Tails, slash. 10 Tails, slash. How do I deal with 10 Tails Obito? Slash, okay? So, realistically, we should ground these characters as their relative war arc primes. So, the characters would be Madara, EMS Sasuke before the Renegon, or else Renegon Sasuke is just going to clear the whole team. Itachi, now we'll go over some Itachi stuff later, like the Edo, live scaling. And then, of course, Renegon Obito. So we won't be including Shisui, Izuna, or Fugaku. Shisui is sort of irrelevant. Danzo was faking him out. Izuna, a little bit irrelevant. Fugaku, also pretty irrelevant. Kind of hard to scale. Otherwise, on the Hokage team, we'll then do Hashirama, Sage Hashirama, Tobirama, basically what you see in the war arc. Hiruzen, now this one will have to be explained, but we'll be going over the alive prime Hiruzen. and some details about what that could mean. And then, of course, Minato. This won't be KCM2 Minato. This will be base Minato, who may be able to use Sage Mode here or there. So their team will not be including Tsunade. Tsunade, I'm going to be honest, is just not relevant. I'm going to be honest, Itachi would point a finger at her and she would explode just like Orochimaru did. Kakashi and Naruto, these two characters are too OP for the team. Even adding like War Arc Kakashi and War Arc Naruto is just way, way, way too much compared to, say, adding Izuna or Fugaku. So that will be the 4v4. And I think this is the 4v4 that most people have in mind. Outside of all the alien god power-ups the characters get, this is the heavy hitter, prime shinobi 4v4 team. You could even just explain Shisui not being there. Think about Shisui getting flatlined by Danzo, and then MS Sasuke was kind of putting Danzo through a Dark Souls playthrough, and that was just MS Sasuke. You get over Itachi having like a Darth Vader amp after the Uchiha slaughter, whereas Shisui and Itachi were rivals before, and then Itachi gets the massive power-ups that Tobirama would explain Madara's intense powers as well. So this then gets into Fugaku being kind of weirdly unscalable, and he's just objectively slower than Minato, who is the fastest of his era. Databooks say he has like godlike speed in the databooks. Itachi potentially thinks Fugaku is a bad matchup before he gets his amps. Either way, he's a non-factor once again compared to Kakashi or Naruto, so it would be better for the Uchiha if Hokage, Kakashi, and Naruto are not there. This 4v4 is also one of the more balanced fights in Naruto, with all four of these members being able to fight in the Ten Tails battle of the War Arc, and in fact, we pretty much see all of them there, except for Itachi. Itachi may have some indirect power scaling, but that being said, no Edo Tensei bodies. Hashirama and Madara will be massively more powerful due to this, especially Hashirama if you think Edo Madara was stronger for whatever reason. Definitely not implied. So this then leads into, Madara having the Nine Tails. Madara will have the Nine Tails during this battle. This is absolutely mandatory, unless you use Renegon Madara. So they need Hashirama and Madara to take care of each other, realistically. The Uchiha team does. Madara needs to ensure he gets his majestic attire off ASAP, or Minato could even sever his link to the Nine Tails in ways that the other Uchiha can't actually properly react to him, unless they hope Obito can intercept Minato stopping it. Regardless, majestic attire needs to come out fast, or else Hashirama is just beating Madara. Hashirama was able to beat Madara while he had it. Hashirama then gets massively more powerful, apparently, in his prime. After Madara dies, he has a bunch more techniques that lets him seal Renegon absorption. So Minato would canonically try to teleport to him and attack Obito, possibly off guard, and kill him as well. So neither Obito nor Minato would know about this and potentially both be off guard. So this then leads into Madara with the Renegon and a live body, if you think that the Nine Tails is too much. And this would be way too powerful. So not only is he able to fight Sage Hashirama with just his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, but it's implied he him up canonically a bunch and gets stamina to death. So when you watch Madara versus Hashirama, you'll notice Hashirama is covered in wounds and bruises all the time. And then in a future scene, he'll be kind of healed up. So it's implied that Madara actually does hurt Hashirama more than he hurts him. And then Hashirama regens. But dual Renegon would give him the ability to probably launch off a quadruple limbo assault that makes EMS Madara look weak. Being able to off guard and probably one-shot every single Kage, except for maybe a wanked Hiruzen. With Hashirama maybe being able to survive a fatal attack with regen only to get annihilated in 1v1. We see against Edo Tensei Madara that Hashirama is able to fight against his abilities, but Edo Madara doesn't have a true Renegon amp, so the gap between them would actually be way more massive than the Edo battle, on top of being able to spam Limbo clones that they don't have a counter to. So speed becomes completely irrelevant because it's not perceivable. The attacks come from a completely different dimension. Even Sage Mode can't detect it. Even Kurama motion sensing can't detect it. You need 6-pass sensing. Obito talks about Madara with his Real Eyes basically becoming unstoppable. He doesn't say this about the Ten Tails. He says the dual Renegon is the real threat. So Renegon Obito talks about how One Eye made him basically almost go crazy from the power-up, and they're not even his. And he doesn't even have both of them to multiply their power exponentially. That being said, we'll start the video off the bat without the Nine Tails. The Uchiha lose by default. With dual Renegon Madara, they win by default. So let's keep the video interesting. In the middle, all characters as they were alive in their prime. So no 6 paths, no KCM2 Minato, no Renegon Madara, etc. Despite the overwhelming teamwork advantage the Hokage canonically have, by the way, so it's not even like a subjective take on their skills, such as Tobirama confirming he and Hashirama use flying Raijin to whip him around battlefields, and Madara actually commenting that Tobirama's Edo nerf was highly significant to their battle, as well as Tobirama being able to teach Minato as they fight how to manage a top tier level fight, as just like he did in the show. One thing to consider with Minato is that throughout most of his life, he was not fighting EMS level people. He was fighting like Raikage, he was fighting Killer Bee. So he did probably have to adapt and learn this top tier level fighting, like Hashirama, Hiruzen, and Tobirama were probably already aware of how to handle. The Hokage have another immediate win condition and oddity that can be discussed off the bat, and that is also Hiruzen. Hiruzen is a god tier level shinobi, one of the only 3 stated god of shinobi in Shippuden, and was described as a god of war that would leap battlefield to battlefield and surpassed even all the other Hokage. This is stated in the manga, the anime, the data books, pretty much everything. Even the narrative of the show itself is that the generations surpass each other, and Old Man Hiruzen lived until the end of his life, basically. He lived out all his potential, he didn't die early, he learned every jutsu possible. So then you would see Old Man Hiruzen would be his nerf, while the first and second Hokage were nerfed from Zombie Edo Tensei, and then it was like, you would see how the battle would kind of play out. Of course, it is no understatement to say that if Hiruzen is Hashirama level and has every jutsu in the Leaf Village, that this is once again clean sweep. As not only would he be the same level as Madara, who can no-diff EMS Sasuke in 1v1, Itachi, and probably Rinnegan Obito, albeit he'll be more slippery, he knows how to fight with teamwork with Tobirama, Minato, and Hashirama, literally being in Tobirama's squad and trained by him, and understanding all his maneuvers immediately during the fight with Ten Tails Obito, despite not fighting with him for probably decades. Even as an old man Edo Tensei, he was able to react to Ten Tails Obito's initial attacks and analyze them and their properties immensely, breaking it down faster than any of the other Hokage, something EMS Sasuke and KCM 1.5 Naruto at the time couldn't even comprehend what was happening. With Minato, while being a bit dazed, was at a total loss for words and action. So this, alongside every single jutsu in the Leaf Village, over 1,000 genjutsu alone, which is actually implied, and intimate knowledge on how Uchiha fight, so not only did he have Uchiha teammates, subordinates, and an Uchiha Slayer teacher, but was also getting possibly prepared to take on the entire Uchiha clan with Danzo, who is incredibly weak compared to them, if Itachi didn't pull through. It's hard to say why the Uchiha would even come close to actually winning. Minato can also teleport them to Obito at will once Minato learns that he isn't locked onto Madara like he initially thought due to having his permanent flying Raijin seal on him. Even if Obito escaped to the Kamui realm, he could follow him there and actually teleport out of the realm, as flying Raijin isn't bound by concepts of distance or space and time, due to the fact even Sage Mode Live Rinnegan Madara considers Edo Tobirama's attack potentially lethal and worth avoiding. It's likely that Tobirama has the stopping power to damage EMS Sasuke, Itachi, and likely Rinnegan Obito as well, considering Madara is just realistically far above their level. His tandem paper bombs can also blow up Hashirama's deity gates, and if they just all did like 0 damage at a time, then the deity gates wouldn't even budge when he blows them up. People like to downplay Tobirama, however, Madara notes Tobirama not being able to obtain his power and Hashirama not being able to obtain his power is significant to the battle. He doesn't just say Hashirama only, noting the significance of Tobirama even in a fight against Rinnegan Sage Mode Madara himself. Continuing on, Itachi is sort of relative to initial EMS Sasuke against Kabuto as an Edo Tensei, and arguably weaker while he was alive due to his illness. However, we don't know by how much it actually affected him, if it was just stamina and so on. With Sasuke then growing stronger during the war and his final confrontation against Ten Tails Obito with the Senjutsu Susanoo, as he had to adapt to the god tiers of the shinobi world multiple times, just like Naruto and Minato had to. So it's hard to argue Itachi would still be on the level of late game EMS, even being charitable. Even the level of Sasuke Susanoo clearly surpasses Itachi's later in the war arc, although Itachi does have useful hacks techniques. In the novel, Itachi is being set up as a nuisance and rival to Obito, but this is Sharingan Obito, who is massively weaker than the white mask form we see in the war arc, while Itachi grew unquantifiably stronger and then gained an illness and blindness as time went on. The only other way to interpret Hiruzen outside of the God of Shinobi thing is Hiruzen in his prime would still likely surpass Tobirama in power. And this is very realistic and actually empirically provable. It's not really reasonable to actually not give him that status. While I can understand people like to cope about Hiruzen because as an old man, he was kind of crying and holding back on Orochimaru, and they like to reject every data book, he still has to be at least above Tobirama, and that's not debatable. For one, it is once again confirmed in Data Book 4 that Hiruzen is much more talented than Tobirama, so even if you want to say him being above Hashirama and Part 1 is retcon, this would still apply. And Hiruzen grew very old and used all his talents to their fullest extent, mastering every jutsu ever and making Orochimaru his fanboy. And Orochimaru knew very distinctly what Tobirama was. In fact, Tobirama was Orochimaru's favorite Hokage. Convincing Orochimaru that collecting jutsu made you stronger probably because Hiruzen surpassed Tobirama from obtaining all of these jutsu. In the war arc, Edo Hiruzen is also able to save Naruto from the God Tree with raw striking, while Tobirama struggles to think of a way to help him using ninjutsu and his full speed. Right after this, Edo Hiruzen then outperforms the entire Shinobi Alliance put together against Guru Zetsu. While they are all basically useless against it, even Shikamaru with over 200 IQ can't think of anything other than just letting Hiruzen just like protect them from dying from this one guy. Even as an Edo, it is still old Hiruzen's body and likely physically nerfed in power. Either way, still a tier of opponent that this Madara would likely want to be wary of. Tobirama is even more absolutely cracked if you think he is superior to a non-avatar KCM2 Minato in terms of speed, such as when he grabbed Obito's True-Seeking Orb away from him before EMS Sasuke and Minato could properly react. The obvious contention I laid out years ago is that I believe Minato's reactions are nerfed in the war after he slashes Obito. I said this basically almost 7 years ago, in fact. So not only can you deduce this by the ellipses in Minato's dialogue suggesting delayed thoughts, but also the data book itself says so. And he isn't probably at max again until he has his Kushina flashback while fighting alongside Bijou Sage Naruto. But it is a debate. KCM2 Naruto was enough to make Sasuke start crapping himself in anger. With KCM2 Minato fighting close by him, it'd be no exaggeration to say that if Tobirama is on that level and Hiruzen is above that the Uchiha are absolutely cooked. So for this video, we won't be saying that Tobirama is KCM2 Minato level. But it is another win-conditioned way of thinking for them. You'll notice as the video goes on that the Hokage actually develop more ways to interpret victory over the Uchiha. And in fact, if this video went on for hours, it would probably only get worse. Minato is the last one to go over for the Hokage, and Minato himself has lots of ways to scale him. Lots of ways of wank, lots of ways of downplay, etc. Some people will say that he can absolutely annihilate Hashirama. Some people will say, why did he struggle with 14-year-old Obito? So, for instance, on one hand, the third Hokage seems to be more frightened of Minato than Hashirama and Tobirama, but you could say it's just because he's scared of getting jumped. Some people say that it's stated Minato is the greatest godlike speed. Could just be for his air, but maybe it's all time. Tobirama arrived at the battlefield before Hashirama, Tobirama using just movement speed. And then on the other hand, it just seems like he could barely take down the Nine Tails and Obito at the same time. But what is objectively and unequivocally true is that Minato has faster body flickers than Tobirama. This is mistranslated in the manga. Immensely fast striking and kunai placement that also impresses Tobirama, and relatively godlike speed to a Hiruzen from at least 17 years before this, or at least 12 years before the start of Naruto, who likely could perform similar actions as his Edo Tensei form. A state that Orochimaru concedes would mop him and could shove the Nine Tails out of the village and fight it for a time while still being retired and much likely weaker with less stamina. Due to this, Minato would likely be able to keep up with the Hokage Uchiha brawl, just like his heavily fatigued Edo state could keep up with Guy and Madara. Albeit nothing says he'd be as fast as them in a direct fight. He can still teleport around and offer support even in a match like that, and he would be faster while alive than he was as an Edo. So at the absolute worst, if you want him to say Minato's Rasenkans couldn't even destroy 14-year-old Obito enough to kill him, let alone Renegon to Obito at full power with his Gunbai fan or something, he could still be a teleport merchant with sealing jutsu you learn from Kushina daily, with the ability to seal Nine Tails level threats in a multitude of ways, as well as other chakra seals, such as the ability to separate you from your summon, or even Genjutsu captive. Minato also can seal or teleport people away with Flying Raijin, meaning he can likely remove Madara, Sasuke, or Itachi from the battlefield, and eventually Minato and the others alongside Tobirama can use techniques such as hitting each other with attacks and then teleporting an enemy into the attack, such as with 10 Tails Obito. This would likely be fatal to the likes of Sasuke and Itachi specifically, who have no known regen or enhanced physical bodies. Even if Minato just removes Sasuke, this would give the Hokage a very clear advantage for a good time, and with Minato's ability to constantly press Rinnegan Obito with the other Hokage, it's unlikely Obito could actually stop him. That being said, it's likely Obito is much stronger than people think as well, as both Obito and Minato are probably not at full power in their actual fight, and Obito realistically had zero chance of ever beating Minato. He planned on hitting him with Kamui and stealing him away, not knowing his flying Raijin could leave the Kamui realm immediately. Minato is nerfed by his own admission, having to teleport Ninetales Bijou Bomb, summon Gamabunta, dealing with the sealing of Kushina's birth, save Naruto, gets hit by shrapnel, and teleport multiple times, whereas Obito had to summon the entire Ninetales, Genjutsu, and control it, which in the War Arc we see even with lesser Bijou that is hard, let alone just giant sage creatures, and then fight Minato and spam his MS. This all makes sense with Obito considering Itachi in likely a much stronger state closer to being a rival to him in the novels, with Itachi in his prime being almost EMS Sasuke tier, capable of facing the Ten Tails with help and being far above what the Kage could handle, with even MS Sasuke eventually making the Raikage shit himself in fear and actually hide, and while Danzo had to play Dark Souls against him hoping Sasuke would get tired after killing him over and over. Obito in the war is also fatigued, even with the Rinnegan, or at least not what he'd be in a straight 1v1. He had to control multiple Bijou, Edo Tensei Jinchuriki, the Geto Mazo, barriers around the Geto Mazo, MS all day, and then he got jumped by people that actually Madara had to admit were impressive. And after that, Obito then faces the Alliance while QB Naruto fends off all his attacks. Finally, Amaterasu. Some people think this is an instant one-shot kill jutsu for non-Six Paths characters. However, we see during the Kage summon that can be avoided by version 2 Raikage. You could argue that Amaterasu is faster when you are stronger. So example, is Six Paths Sasuke's Amaterasu faster than Kage Summit Sasuke's Amaterasu? Probably, but it's also irrelevant to the point that it can be reacted to. Being reacted to by both Naruto in the Six Paths battle and the Raikage, as well as potentially Kaguya, Six Paths Obito, who could also whip his staff to block it like GT Goku versus Frieza and Cell. Either way, Amaterasu from Itachi isn't going to be the instant kill or anti-speed counter some would like to think it is, with Sasuke even resorting to combining his Amaterasu or Inferno style with Susanoo arrows to bolster probably range and speed, which Black Zetsu on half-dead Rinnegan Obito's body could react to basically the most mastered EMS Sasuke we get before he attains his Rinnegan. One condition that might be weird is if you can combine Susanoo. So can you combine the Majestic Attire Susanoo from Madara with just all of the other Susanoo from all the other characters, and then use MS abilities on it? That might be something they could all do, and that would give them a huge advantage, but that's never really been shown. It's at this point you might be asking, this sounds all over the place, what's going on? Well, the point of this YAP session was to lay out the groundwork for an actual battle. It's to establish that a realistic conversation about what can happen and the most common sense conclusion. The Hokage more than likely win. There are simply way too many win conditions they possess, as well as way more canonical and less subjective team-up options and combinations that we know of 100% without headcanon. Being able to teleport around with perfect precision multiple fighters, some of which know thousands of jutsus, all of which have sealing, know the counters to most of your main abilities such as Ocular Genjutsu and Susanoo, and methods for restraining them or removing them, versus the opposition not being able to say much of the same. The whole point of the Speedster meta in Naruto was to counter the Sharingan. I'm not joking, that's probably why Tobirama made it. Gets to the point where it's like, yeah, what does EMS Sasuke do when Tobirama or Minato teleports Hashirama onto him in a wood-style prison that can negate the Ninetales, parts of which made Sasuke have an aneurysm, and suppresses the entire Rinnegan? Even their heavy hitters, which are realistically Obito and Madara, have two huge counters. Hashirama just objectively can take on Madara, especially if you don't give him the Ninetales, which is outside help realistically, and then work in tandem with Tobirama to hit him even harder, with Minato having a huge win condition already lined up against Obito. Even if you can't kill him for whatever reason, he can 100% seal him. Most people don't think you can seal a shinobi, or don't try to, but then forget that Itachi literally seals Orochimaru, and the entire war arc was dedicated to sealing shinobi zombies. Hiruzen and Minato definitely have an excess of these techniques at the bare minimum, with Minato having the most powerful in the shinobi world spoon-fed to him daily by his wife. Even the crazier abilities like Itachi's Tosuka Blade, which may actually be known by Hiruzen if Orochimaru was aware of it, but that'd be kind of headcanon, don't even have the attack speed to actually hit anybody here. He is the weakest link among them, and he can still be BFR'd immediately. Realistically, all the Hokage have to do is support Hashirama and Hiruzen, who, I'm going to be honest with you guys, Hiruzen is OP. Like, you guys have been coping about this for a decade. You got to move on. Hiruzen is OP. All right, you know, I've been placating, like, all right, Hashirama's a little above Hiruzen, maybe got wrecked. It's just not true, man. There's nothing to support it. You're coping. Hiruzen is OP. But anyway, even if you don't give him that, be honest, they would absolutely pummel Madara, and Hashirama and Hiruzen teleport around, and then they would deal with Sasuke, Itachi, and then Obito. And then jump Madara after, with Madara in character likely not even being this super team player for a matchup like this. Obito's main win condition is probably trying to get a Kamui off on Hashirama, but this can actually backfire on him as well if things don't go perfectly, becoming tangible while doing this around a person who can obliterate him with many ops that can have fatal attacks surrounding, with Minato having a surefire counter. This matchup becomes a lot better if Minato has no seal on Obito, and to make the fight even more goofy. But even then, the Uchiha are just kind of hard-pressed. EMS, Sasuke, and Itachi, while they have strong attacks, they don't have the same utility for team fights like this. With Sasuke being more of an offensive attack type that gets stat-checked by Hashirama and Hiruzen, stop coping, way too hard, and can be avoided by the others way too hard, with Itachi just being way worse, actually, beginning outscaled by this point in the series. That being said, the Hokage likely win, but all of these characters are very powerful. I'd argue that all of them would probably be, you know, top tier of the shinobi verse, at least pre-6 paths. But realistically, come on, Obito was struggling with KCM 2. When KCM 2 got whipped out, he was crapping himself. Tobirama, Hashirama, and Hiruzen are reacting to characters above that. They're able to deduce full plans to a character above that. He's struggling to take down KCM 1 Naruto. Kakashi and Guy and Killer B are kind of making Madara and Obito go like, these guys are kind of pressing us. Not to lie, though, those characters are very strong, and I might make a video on that. But it's just, what does Itachi do in this formula? If he doesn't get carried by the others, his stats are just too subjective. You'd really have to wank it, really press that Edo Itachi scaling, and it just becomes very unrealistic. And even EMS Sasuke, he's just clearly weaker than Madara by a significant portion, and so is Obito. So, that being said, the fact that Minato and Tobirama likely can catch up and keep up with Hashirama, teleport him, Hiruzen's probably a heavy hitter. It's just too much to handle. They have too much versatility. On top of the fact that they're canonically Uchiha slaying characters. They all know how to slay Uchiha. They all do. Minato, at worst, might not have great knowledge about it. But 3 out of 4 of them, just objectively Uchiha slayers. While maybe 1 or 2 of the Hokage are prepared for the speedsters and Hashirama. And even then, Madara's just like, I could just never be Hashirama. He just gives up. So that being said, not much else to say. You could probably go on about this for 2 hours. There's probably so many details you can go over. Like, what about Minato as the Yellow Flash as compared to the Raikage? You could just say it's like Jonin era. You could go on and on and on. It's the eternal debate that will recycle every 5 years. But that's my opinion as it stands right now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you later.